Okay, up until this point, I've been using my schematic design walls. So remember when we went into our wall preferences, actually our wall styles, we created multiple different wall styles. So in this case, I just created two. I have my generic interior partition and I have my new construction. So our new construction 4-inch, our new construction 6-inch, black fill, black pen, uh, solid pen. We did our existing construction, so that was going to be a black pen and a white fill, and then our demo, which was a white fill and a dashed black line. Correct? Everybody's good with that. So that's going to be our schematic design. When we get into construction documentation and or modeling, we want more information in these wall objects. So if I go into my Vectorworks libraries, I can see that Vectorworks already has multiple different wall styles. So we can see there's the generic wall styles, a virtual wall, that's kind of giving other objects information. Our cast in place, our concrete masonry units, our clear story walls, or sorry, curtain walls. Our exterior wood framed walls with different siding options, our cast in place concrete with different furring options and thicknesses. Also, steel stud framing, structural insulated panels, and more interior partitions are available here. So these aren't necessarily to our BC building code. So BC building code is very stringent. We have a lot of environmental factors that we need to deal with: seismic, snow, and rain. So right now I'm going to choose my exterior 2x6 wood siding. If I go up into my wall preferences, I can see I have this wall style. So it is a standard wall. It's not a curtain wall, first of all. I can see visually what this wall looks like. So on my interior face of my wall, I have my drywall, and it has this hatch that is meant to represent drywall. I have my 2x6 or 5.5-inch stud cavity, and in that stud cavity is going to be batt insulation. So that's represented by the graphics here. Then I have my sheathing. Oh, I can zoom in when I'm just going to hit OK right now and draw this wall, for instance, so we can zoom in more closely. So I can see that this stucco, and depending on the scale, there's flex in this stucco. I can see my sheathing has graphically represents what plywood would look like. So there's multiple layers of plywood. There's the in this case vertical lines, and then the diagonals to represent what the symbols for sheathing. Then I can see there's my siding. So in this case, the siding panels are split like this, whereas if I drew a horizontal wall, there are no separations, right? So it's basically taking that siding hatch, and in this point, it's not actually, I want to see something. There is no visual hatch there. I can see as I'm moving down there we go. So it's taking this siding hatch, which is just like, remember when I showed you that 3D model view in Hidden Line, it had that hatch pattern. It's applying to that hatch pattern to these objects in top plan view. So here it would just be, for instance, if I did a rectangle and I apply this hatch, this is siding, Dutch slab, Okay, so I can even see that these lines line up. Okay, so it's applied this hatch to these pieces that are siding. Does that make sense? Okay, so I can get rid of that. So here we can see what it close up, what it looks like if I go back into my wall tool preferences. So this isn't necessarily how we want it, but we can easily make changes. So I'm going to, this wall is broken up into components. So I have my wood siding, I have my sheathing, I have my wood stud framing, and I have my gypsum board. I can see this is the order, and I can actually see as I hover over these order numbers, my cursor changes because I can easily quickly click and drag and change that order of those components. So I've changed the order of those components, and up in visually, the preview of my wall style shows me how that would actually be represented and look. So I don't actually want to do that, but I can see that I can possibly do that. So here's my wood siding, sheathing. This little core, there's one check mark because this is the core component of our wall. So when we're drawing, or when we've been drawing our walls, we only have our outside reference line, our center reference line, and our right reference line, okay? But what we can do is when we're drawing these walls, we can do it so that it's our measurements and our point of reference are from our core component. So in this case, when we're doing this, you could measure to outside of studs, or you can measure to outside of sheathing, which is the structure. So we are going to practice in that way. So for instance, if I wanted to do that, then I want to make my core component my sheathing. Okay, so I'm going to write this wall style. I'm going to make these changes and then write the wall style up on the board. But I'll just show you and just pay attention to the changes that I'm making right now. I'm also going to use a 1/2 inch gypsum board. So by double clicking on that component or selecting it and then hitting edit, it brings me into these wall component settings. I can see that here's that hatch, here's the texture. So 2D hatch, 3D texture. Now I want this thickness to be 1/2 inch, so I can either put 1/2 or 0.5. We can also get into the lambda values and the effective insulation values. We don't need to do that right now, but know that that setting's there. Also, this isn't component, and when we're building a house, for instance, our stud frame goes from floor to ceiling, right? But our drywall is inside of that. So we can graphically and represent and create these objects so they do look exactly like how they would be built on site. Okay, so we can change these components, and we'll get into this eventually, and changing those levels and heights. And this is where we do so, because we have different bounds. So right now I'm going to change my thickness to 1/2 inch and hit OK, and it changes that thickness here. It also changes the overall thickness of my wall, right? Because I've changed that thickness of a component, so then that applies also to the entire component, the entire wall. So like I was saying, this isn't code compliant to BC Building Code, so I need to add another component here. I can either add a new component and call it whatever I want. Right now, I will do that. So this is going to be our rain screen. It's going to have a thickness of 1/2 inch. We'll leave it at 1/2 inch for now. And then I'm going to give it a color just so I graphically can see it's something different, and hit OK. So this placed my rain screen on the inside of my sheathing. That's not where I want it to be located. So I'm going to click and drag this rain screen up so that it's wood siding, our rain screen, sheathing, wood stud, and gypsum board. Okay, so I've made these changes to the components. I can look up in my wall style and see now this is an unstyled wall. If I don't do anything, if I don't save this wall style, save preferences as wall style, I could use this wall, but all those changes I just made will be lost if I change my wall style. So I want to make sure I'm saving preferences as wall style. I don't want to override the already existing wall style in the library. So I'm just going to modify the name of this and then it'll create a new one. So this is going to be my rain screen, or with rain screen.
Did it put, when you name it a rain screen, does it put that extra air pocket in?
Well, so what I'm doing is I've already made those changes. Now I'm labeling what those the changes I've just made. So it doesn't create those changes for me. I'm just saving those preferences as a wall style. So I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to hit OK. And then, for instance, I'll just draw a piece of wall right now. So I can see how there is a bit of a difference, right? There's my rain screen. I can also, if I go up into my drop down menu for my wall styles, if I go into my open file, I can see I have the exterior wood siding as it was in the Vectorworks library. And I can also see I have my 2x6 wood siding with rain screen. Okay. Now, this building this floor plan that we've done is 40 feet by 29 feet. Okay. So I want to draw these walls now with that new wall style. Okay, so I have to pay attention to my settings along the top. So remember, when we're drawing in polygon mode, we're drawing in a clockwise direction so that our left reference point is where we are taking our dimensions from, and that left side is then the values that we input into the links for our walls. So I'm going to choose my left insertion mode. Now here is where we need to make changes. I don't want to do it for the wall control line mode. I want to choose my core component control line mode. Okay, so remember my settings. I chose my sheathing as my core component. So now if I draw my walls, and I'll leave it in polygon mode, I'm going to type in that I want this 40 feet. And this is going to be 29 feet. And this. Okay. So now if I take my dimensions, so this is where I'm going to go into my dimension tool. I'm going to zoom in with my snap loop, or the Z key. I want to measure from this point. Why do I want to measure from this point? Outside of sheathing. So outside of stud is going to be this point. If we've labeled that where we're measuring. But this case, I'm measuring from the outside of sheathing to the outside of sheathing. Which is this point. I want to make sure it snaps and I get my 29 feet. The outside of the wall is not those measurements. So outside of siding is going to be 29 feet and 3 inches. Okay, and this is why it's important that know where we're measuring from and make sure we're drawing with those settings to have